Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today? Councilors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that the March 21st, 2024 agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of March 7th? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved the March 7th, 2024 regular meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I then have a mover and a seconder to adjourn the regular session and move into the public meeting portion of the Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Barry?
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council hereby adjourns its regular meeting at 9:04 a.m. in order to proceed into a public meeting for the purpose of zoning bylaw amendment applications 1, AHZBA 1023, part of Lot 27, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, 2, AHZBA 124, part of Lot 28, Concession 11, Geographic Township of Stanhope, 3, AHZBA 224, part of Lot 27, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, and 4, AHZBA 324, part of Lot 10, Concession 5, Geographic Township of Stanhope.
All in favor? That's carried. Good morning, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Mayor and Council.
So our first application is by Ken Rosie for a zoning amendment in Stanhope.
Thank you. Yes, this property is currently zoned rural residential and designated rural under the official plan. Council at its regular meeting of October 5th of 2023 deferred this application until such time legal access to the property was confirmed. Confirmation of legal access has now been provided and the application can proceed. The property is approximately 1.13 acres in area with 22 meters of frontage on Chelsea Lane. Surrounding uses are generally rural residential and shoreline residential, and the lands are currently vacant. The property is currently zoned rural residential, and the applicant is proposing to construct a single-family dwelling. However, the zoning bylaw does require vacant lots to have frontage on an improved public street in order to be considered eligible for development, and the lands are currently accessed through a privately maintained road. This zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the lands from rural residential to rural residential with an exception to permit the development of a single-family dwelling on a lot without frontage on an improved public street. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning amendment.
I understand that the applicant is here and may wish to speak to the application.
No, they're actually they're not in attendance.
Okay. Are there any questions from council about the application? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the application? Receive and approve? Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this particular application? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next application, which is a zoning bylaw amendment by Godfrey in Stanhope.
Thank you. The subject lands are zoned rural and environmental protection and designated waterfront and rural under the official plan. The lands are approximately 20.36 acres in area with 480 meters of frontage on Highway 118. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential and the lands are currently vacant. The property is subject to application for consent H-055/22, which is to sever a 5-acre residential building lot with the retained lands to be added to an adjacent developed residential property to the north. The purpose and effect of this zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone a portion of the lands from rural to rural exception in order to permit a workshop and to permit boat storage as an additional permitted use. The proposed rezoning is to fulfill a condition of the application for consent. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and does he wish to speak to the application?
I think we covered it. It's been a.
Sorry. Sorry.
I don't think we have to discuss anything else. It's been going on for about 2.5 years, so I think it's gone through all the different councils and all the different things that can be done. Everything else has been submitted, so I think that should be there.
Do any members of council have questions for Mr. Godfrey? The one question that I would have is, are you planning on putting in some sort of buffer between the property and the highway?
Yes, it's been discussed in previous ones that I have to do a row of trees to, kind of disguise it as best I can.
Okay, just asking again to confirm.
Yep, Sean's asked and I've heard it, and yes, the answer is yes.
Are there any other members of the public or anyone else who wishes to speak to the application? Okay, if there are no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Godfrey.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next zoning bylaw amendment by Gritsenko in Stanhope.
Thank you. This property is zoned rural residential and designated rural under the official plan. The lands are approximately 0.8 acres in area with 42.6 meters of frontage on Providence Drive. Surrounding uses are generally rural residential and the lands are currently vacant. The lands are currently zoned rural residential and the applicant is proposing to construct a single family dwelling on the property. However, the zoning bylaw does require a vacant lot to have frontage on an improved public street, which these lands are currently accessed through a privately maintained road. The zoning amendment will rezone the lands from rural residential to rural residential with an exception in order to permit the development of a single family dwelling on a lot without frontage on an improved public street. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Is the applicant present and does he wish to speak to the council?
I believe they are, so we'll bring them in.
Good morning.
Good morning, Council. I'm not sure what to speak about the application. I think everything was outlined perfectly. If you have any-
You've heard Mr. O'Callahan's report, so there's nothing that you'd like to add to the report at this point?
No.
Do members of council have questions for either Mr. O'Callahan or Mr. Gritsenko? Hearing none, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the final application, which is Parish for a zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. This property is currently zoned rural shoreline residential 2 and environmental protection and designated waterfront and rural under the official plan. The lands are approximately 33.3 acres in area with 115 meters of frontage on Botcung Lake. Surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential and rural. This property is subject to application for consent H-028/21 to sever a 2-acre lot with 60 meters of frontage on Boshkung Lake. The retained lands will be 31.6 acres with 54 meters of frontage on Boshkung Lake. The lands are currently developed with a dwelling, several sheds, a dry land boathouse, and a workshop. And the applicant is proposing to sever the lands, resulting in the cottage and shed being on the severed lands and the remaining structures on the retained lands. The purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone a portion of the lands from shoreline residential 2 and rural to shoreline residential 2 exception and rural, and to recognize deficient lot frontage and to reduce the northerly interior side yard setback. That's for the existing dwelling on the property. This proposed rezoning is to fulfill a condition of the application for consent. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received, but just this morning I did receive a request from an agent representing a property owner in the area requesting deferral with concerns to access to the subject lands. I believe they are here also to speak to the application, but I can touch on that point just briefly. This application for zoning amendment has nothing to do with the access to the subject lands. That would have been dealt with at the consent stage of the process, which has been approved by County Land Division Committee. So any questions of access to this property can have no bearing on the zoning bylaw amendment application before council today.
Is there a residence on the retained land?
Sorry, I'll just have to look at the drawing quickly. On the retained lands currently, no, there is not. So a condition of the application for consent was to establish a principal use such as a residence on that property. So that will need to be fulfilled before the consent can be finalized.
Okay, so is either the applicant or is the applicant present and wish to speak?
Yes, they are. We'll bring them in.
Okay.
Robin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Parrish. You've heard Mr. O'Callahan's report. Is there anything that you wish to add as information for council?
I don't believe so. I think there's been an extensive amount of work done to get to this point. And unless you have a question for me that I could try to answer, I'm satisfied with the process that's taken place.
Do members of council have questions for either Mr. O'Callahan or Mr. Parrish? Councillor Barry, and then the Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Just clarifying the access for both properties. So I'm assuming that the yellow laneway will access the severed piece. And then the existing gravel driveway would be the access to the new property or the retained property. Is that correct?
The access that is in yellow it has been existing for a few years now, and that is the right of way to the to be severed lot. The retained property has always had access from Triple Creek Lane, but Triple Creek Lane ends where 1087 begins. So it still does have legal access from Triple Creek Lane.
Sorry, clarify where is Triple Creek Lane on the drawing?
Triple Creek Lane transverses from north to south along the west boundary of Boshkung Lake. It's a private road. And we also, and have for a number of years, own the property at 1085 Triple Creek Lane. And Triple Creek Lane ends where 1085 Triple Creek Lane property is. And that will be the legal access to 1087 Triple Creek Lane as it is now. It will remain. It's the retained parcel. It's not being created. It's existing, and it will remain the same.
Did you want to
If
speak to that,
that's-
Mr. O'Callaghan?
Yeah, so Mr. Parrish has outlined the access there. But again, I do need to stress that the access has nothing to do with this application before council today, so.
Which is a point made earlier. Okay, and is there, oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks. Sean, would you remind us where Boshkong is? Is it close to being a capped lake? Presumably it isn't already a capped lake in terms of development?
Correct. It is not a at capacity lake in our official plan, so law creation is permitted on the lake, subject to certain studies being completed, which as part of the severance process they did complete.
Any other questions for either Mr. Parrish or Mr. O'Callaghan? Hearing none, we do have someone else here from, is it Poirier Consulting?
Yes. from
Or a
Marie Poirier,
representative thereof?
Consulting.
Good morning.
If you could identify yourself and your affiliation.
Good morning, council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Cassie Sauer. I'm a planner at Marie Poirier Planning. It's 44 King William Street, Unit A, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H1G3. So, along with Marie, I'm the acting agent for the Lake Association and the neighbors of the subject property. So we now realize that access is not going to be discussed at this meeting today. But at this time, we're requesting a deferral of the application on the basis that our firm did not receive appropriate notification of the meeting today. This is really important to the neighbors and our clients, and they would like to be heard. We cannot comment further as we have not had a chance to review the application and we were not notified as we requested in our letter dated April 13th, 2022, which was addressed to the county and the township. And we respectfully request deferral of this application. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Could you speak to that, Mr. O'Callaghan?
Certainly. So proper public notification was provided as legislated under the Planning Act to neighboring property owners. There was a letter received from Marie Poirier's office requesting notification subject to the consent applications, I believe it was. Since the consent has been approved conditionally, and this is a matter of fulfilling a condition of consent, no additional notification beyond what was provincially legislated was provided. So, yeah.
Questions or comments from council for either Mr. O'Callaghan or the consultant? So your recommendation would be that we move forward with the application?
Yes, that is my recommendation today.
Any further, Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Thank you. I wonder if I might ask a question of the representative who's called in. If access is no longer a point for debate at this table, may I inquire as to the nature of content of what the community may wish to discuss? Should we choose to defer? Or is that still confidential?
Through you, at this time, there just seems to be some confusion amongst the neighbors regarding the approved severance and the access thereof. So I can't really comment because we're not sure what our position is at this time.
Okay, thank you.
I think what I'm hearing is that the due notification was given at the time that it was required, and then no further notification was required as this is a part of the approval process.
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments for either party? Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak to this application? Hearing none, just a comment then that anyone wishing a copy of the notice of the decisions that we've made today can request them in writing to the clerk. Could I have a mover and a seconder to return to the regular session of council? Councilor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, council adjourns its public meeting at 9:23 AM and the regular meeting resumed.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report for the zoning amendment by Canarosi? Councilors Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that council receives planning report PL 1624 regarding zoning of lands located at part of lot 27, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, and council directs a bylaw be brought forward for consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I then have a mover and a seconder to receive the report on the zoning bylaw amendment by Godfrey? Councilor Shortreed. Council Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives planning report PL 1724 regarding rezoning of lands located at part of lot 28, concession 11, geographic township of Stanhope, and the council directs a bylaw be brought forward for consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report for the zoning bylaw application by Kritsenko? Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councilor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 1824 regarding rezoning of lands at part of lot 27, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, and council directs a bylaw be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a mover and a seconder to receive the application for zoning bylaw amendment by parish. Councilors Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that council receives planning report PL 1924 regarding rezoning of lands located at part of lot 10, concession 5, geographic township of Stanhope, and council directs a bylaw be brought forward for consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. So we have no delegations today. So next up on the agenda is building and bylaw enforcement. Morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This morning is simply the monthly activities report for January and February. Couple of highlights. We had our deputy CBO received his qualification in plumbing all buildings. And officer, this is not on the report, but I just received notice a couple days ago that Officer Masia became certified with the Municipal Law Enforcement Officers Association, Ontario, and therefore may use their credentials MLEO (C). So that's kind of exciting.
Well, our congratulations to them both.
Yes, and other than that, 13,000 in permit fees and about 3.5 million in construction value. So
Questions for Mr. Moore? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councilor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Counselor Barry. Be resolved, council receives building bylaw report BLDG 724 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Parks, Recreation and Trails. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So first is the set of, or the update for the Recreation Committee from February 21st.
Correct, yes, so from what, the only thing I'd like to highlight here is that as part of the annual, as part of the terms of reference, there is an annual review of the terms of reference of the committee. At their last meeting, the committee did do a preliminary review of that terms of reference. And they furthered that discussion a little bit actually into last night's meeting, but deferred it to the next meeting where people want to expand on some thoughts and ideas. But council can expect to see potentially some recommended updates to the terms of reference around what the committee is discussing for further definition of various roles within the committee between staff and members of committee. And beyond that, I'd, through you, Mayor, turn to the representative council from the committee meetings.
Counselor Shortreed. Oh, I won't go on.
Sorry, we had a meeting last night as well, so I'm kind of sorting the two meetings out in my head. The last night's meeting, actually, our rec coordinator was back, so that was great. The committee is moving along with our survey results that we did do. There was 1,200 buttons sold for Snowball, which was a really, really great turnout. And they are continuing to discuss changes for Snowball for next year.
Anything specific that's in mind for changes to Snowball?
Not specific, no.
Any questions for Counselor Shortreed? Or Mr. Card? Hearing none, we have a mover and a seconder then to receive the committee update from February 21st. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Counselor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Counselor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives February 21st, 2024 Recreation Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And then next is your report on monthly activities for February.
Yes, so thank you. Through you, Mayor. There are several things that I'd like to highlight, and attached to this report, I've also put overview of the Dorset Snowball event, which I'll touch on. Just beginning with our recruitment process update. Again, we have been recruiting for all seasonal positions within trails and recreation and the tower, which is 18 positions total. The application deadline was February 29th. We did get a number of applications for all the various positions. We have been going through interviews over the past couple of weeks. We have, unfortunately, again, been struggling to find swim instructors for our swim program with low application numbers. So we've reposted that. And we're still also accepting applications for stewardship youth rangers. And of course, all the information on how to apply is on the township website. Next is I did attend what's called the Local Citizens Committee meeting for the Bancroftman and Forest area last month, where they presented their annual work schedule. The reason I go to those is because all of the crown land around our trail assets, our campsite and canoe routes have forestry that happen around them. So understanding where their operations are going to be in proximity to our assets so that we can plan and communicate. And in this case, actually have to close some campsites around the Dan McEwen Horse Lake area, where there's potentially going to be forestry activity in proximity to them in the summer. There's also some potential planned activities around the Circuit of Five Viewpoints Trail. Now, the nature of those are each that right now they're potential plans, but whether or not they happen later in this year has not yet been finalized. Next, I just going into trails operations and then parks and our rinks. So this is really the story of the winter that wasn't, as everybody's aware of. So the ski trails ended up closing on February 29th. Typically, we operate into March. As any trail operator or winter activity operator anywhere in the province can attest to, it was a very challenging winter for anything related to that. It is the shortest season I've been involved in on ski trails, and council will note accordingly, there's a significant drop in anticipated revenues for ski trails. We had budgeted revenues last for the season of $10,400 and ended up with $2,300. This same sort of trend moved into our outdoor rinks, and we closed those on February 21st. We ended up only ever being able to open the Dorset Ice Palace for 3 days. I don't have the exact number of days. I'm still assessing that for the Stanhope Gardens, but it was open most of the season, typically having to close it whenever temperatures went above zero and we had those rain events. But something of note there is the Dorset Ice Palace. I was looking at staff time spent on each rink relative to how many days they're open. The Dorset Ice Palace was close to 140 staff hours. The rink was open for 3 days. The Stanhope Gardens was closer to 80 staff hours and open a large portion of the season. And again, the reason for that is the size of the locations. And in the case of the Dorset rink, the base, which is a natural gravel base and relies on the ground having frost in it and being frozen. So we didn't really ever see any significant frost in the ground. And several times when we got close to getting there and building up ice, there would be one of these warm weather events and the frost would be out of the ground and it would all melt away. The reason that information is important to me is any considerations when we're doing long-term planning for that infrastructure might want to take that into account. Next item is I had mentioned in my last monthly activity report that we could expect a review from the health unit, which is a typical review that's done every 5 years for our water system directives. In this case, there have been some updated requirements communicated to us in new directives, which would be in the frequency of maintenance inspections on our water systems, where before they were monthly, our directives currently say bi-weekly. Finally, moving into recreation, of course, we're right into, after we finished up with the snowball, hitting the ground running with developing this year's schedule of programs and events. So there's a number of programs and events now being listed on our website. Registrations are being taken for those, and we're currently seeking volunteer soccer coaches. So we've started the recruitment process for that. Ideally, we'd be in the 19 to 20 range for the number of soccer coaches we're looking for. And then we've been starting to plan our programming and reaching out to our program directors for having programs once the Dorset Rec Center is able to reopen. And then if I may, just highlights moving on to the Dorset Snowball Winter Carnival report. So we had a total of 1,209 button sales, which is I've listed the years here, and it's very close to average. So it was a fantastic event, very well attended. The weather turned out to be perfect for that weekend. And again, winter came just in time. We had to truck in snow to make the toboggan race happen, which was fantastic. And something I'd like to highlight is around revenues. There's a pie chart and then it's listed in a table afterwards, but of note here is that at $5,300 in sponsorship, that's close to half of the entire revenue we receive for the snowball. So this is from community businesses, individuals, families that are always willing to sponsor money to make the snowball as big of an event as what it is. So a huge thank you to them. And of course, we have a sign that we've developed to recognize all those sponsorships. It's gone up in town and it will stay up all year long in recognition of that. With the total numbers of attendees, and again, it's pretty close to average, but I was at the event this year and I had an opportunity to move around and just see how parking is and how people, traffic management flow throughout the villages. And something to note is that 12 to 1,500 people, based on what I see with how much parking we have available, is about the threshold of the number of people we'd want to have an event like this. If we got significantly over those numbers, we would need to consider maybe a different kind of parking or traffic arrangement. So, and a nice little note is that the skating party on February 16th on the Friday night had the most people we've ever had in attendance at 60. Those are all the highlights.
Any questions for Chris on his activity report? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Question for Chris and then a question for council. For Chris, would you mind, just for general awareness, for public awareness, describing what you described to me earlier about the difference in percentages with the trails versus water trails for the month of February?
Sure, yes, and through you, Mayor, just to give context to this conversation, Deputy Mayor Dayu was lamenting on the ski trail revenue decrease of 58% compared to the month of February increase for all trails of 15%, and then the year-to-date increase for all trails of 3.5%. And what I can highlight there is that what I wanted to do is I don't typically break out the ski trails as an individual revenue item, but the season ended early and I wanted to be able to just highlight where that revenue was relative to the poor weather season. That ski trail number is included in the all trails year-to-date number, which would include campsite revenue, as well as any donation revenue, rental revenue. And all trails month of February would include both as well. And we see that large increase for the month of February because that's when people are booking their campsites for their summer vacations. So we get a number of people starting to plan their vacations in July and August and making those campsite bookings. And also we have a number of youth camps that now have their staff on, have now taken registration for their summer programs, and they reach out to us to make their bookings for the season.
Satisfy your question?
It sure does. I wasn't sure how one was up so much when the other one was down, and that really clarified that it's the oncoming bookings for the summer that is making the difference. So thanks for that.
And your suggestion for council?
Well, my question for council, now that I'm, sitting at this part of the table and watching people come and go with their water jugs all the time, as we're looking at the water systems, I wonder what council's interest would be in receiving just a general update on the monthly report on how the testing is. So even if it's a general comment such as, all water testing all water testing is within normal limits or whatever it might be, just so that we keep a general eye on the water quality that we are offering to our constituents, given that we are personally accountable for that. I think it would be a nice thing to be informed of, if only in a general sense, not the specific numbers.
Mr. Card, I guess I've got some thoughts about that. I mean, the responsibility for testing lays with staff, and I would look to them on a regular basis to let us know if there were any concerns. Now you're asking for a reverse kind of report to let us know on a regular basis that everything's fine. Comments
Yeah,
from
so-
Mr. Carter or other members of council?
Yes, just to add context, we're required to sample water systems every 3 months. So it's not a monthly sample, but we do maintenance inspections on systems. So if council wanted to consider information specifically around testing, it'd be every 3 months that happens.
Comments from other members of council? Any comment from yourself?
No, I mean, certainly it's something we can include in the reports. As Chris says, it wouldn't be monthly. But certainly if there was a problem, if we had, you know, a test that was bad, certainly council we're required to let council, so council would know immediately. But certainly Chris could include that every 3 months in the report if council wishes.
Any thoughts? Okay. Mr. Card?
And I just want to add something that when we're talking about water sampling and what would be referred to as any adverse test results, our water systems, and any water system actually that's under legislation that gives water to the public, is required to have a functionality in place that if anything were to occur with the treatment system that created a situation that the treatment system was unable to adequately treat water before it went out to the public, it automatically shuts off water. So there is 0% chance adverse water can ever go out to the public. And that's a system that we test every time we do maintenance inspections. So an adverse would come from a pre-treatment sample. So that's to say that it's not possible ultimately to get an adverse from the public water tap. We do an additional test pre-treatment and have an adverse from there.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Yeah, that's great. And I not for a moment would suspect that we would ever have adverse water going out to the public. I'm sure the system is 100% on that. My concern mainly comes from the other side, seeing the nature of the receptacles that people bring to fill their water in, and how in what poor shape some of them are. I would feel more comfortable if there was something that we could always point to say, no, you know, if you were sick, it is not because of our water, it is because of the receptacle that you are filling your you are using to fill your water in. So it's more from the other side, from the public usage side, that my concern resides, not on our systems.
Maybe that's an information piece that the Environment and Stewardship Committee could put forward for the website, just a cautionary note to people. With respect to your activity report, just a comment that I suspect that over time, the snowball will probably increase in size, and so probably we need to keep a little bit of long-term planning for parking in the back of our minds. And also I wanted to offer kudos to the rec committee and to yourself. I know you've taken on an extra load over the last while, and there's been an awful lot of work done by the committee. to make Snowball a success, and that work is much appreciated. I know that it's been a challenge this year, and it's much appreciated. Having said that, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the monthly activity report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives Parks, Recreation and Trails Report PRT 324 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? And just as a note, there will be a bylaw appointing a bylaw enforcement officer for the water trail system later on in the agenda. Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you. Take care.
Next up is environmental business. We see that Melissa has a long list of reports to provide us. You know, unless there's something extraordinary, I don't think we need to go into a lot of detail, assuming that members of council have read these. We'll go through them and see if there are any questions specific to them, but as I say, unless there's something particular of note in each one of them, I think we can go through these fairly quickly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
So the first is the site attendant and maintenance services contract.
So this is follow up to direction from council from November 2023 to move forward and negotiate a new contract for site attendant and maintenance services. This is a 2-year with options for 3 one-year renewals. And I will leave it for questions.
Any questions on this item? We do have a motion to receive the report and approve the extension. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, Council receives environmental report EB 824 regarding site attendance and site maintenance services for information, and council concurs with the recommendations made in the said report, and further that a bylaw be brought forward to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a contract extension agreement between the Township of Algonquin Highlands and Watson General Contracting for site attendance and site maintenance services, with the final form and content being to the satisfaction of the environmental manager and chief administrative officer.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the annual monitoring report for Maple Lake.
If I may, Mayor, I'll just address them as one batch of reports.
Oh, okay.
And there's similarities. I mean, I think it's a good news. All the sites have been operating in compliance with our environmental compliance approvals for 2023. So that's always good news. Nothing significant that's triggered any events as far as sampling goes and in water quality. So that's all good news on that front. Any impacts to the environment are as expected and within allowable limits of those ECAs.
Do members of council have any questions with respect to the annual and biannual monitoring reports? Hearing none, then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the monitoring report for Maple Lake? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives environment report EB 924 regarding 2023 annual monitoring report Maple Lake Waste Disposal Site, and council authorizes KMBM to submit the said monitoring report to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the monitoring report for Pine Springs? Councillor Short-Reed and Berry.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives environmental report EB 1024 regarding the 2023 annual monitoring report Pine Springs Waste Disposal Site for information, and council authorizes KMBM to submit the said monitoring report to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the monitoring report for Oxtongue Lake? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives environmental report EB 1124 regarding 2023 annual monitoring report Oxtongue Lake Waste Disposal Site for information, and council authorizes Canadian to submit the said monitoring report to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the biennial monitoring report for the Hawk Lake Waste Disposal Site? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives environmental business report EB 1224 regarding the 2022-2023 biannual monitoring report Hawk Lake Waste Disposal Site for information, and council authorizes Cambria Inc. to submit the said monitoring report to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the monitoring report for McClintock Lagoon? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives environmental report EB 1324 regarding 2023 annual performance report McClintock Septic Lagoon for information, and council authorizes Cambria Inc. to submit the said report to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. So next on the agenda is are the revised dates for hazardous waste collection. Did you want to speak to that at all, Melissa?
I just, as you've said, it is my suggestions for revised dates. After budget discussions, the decision was to remove one of the events from the schedule. So I have recommended removal of the June 8th event for Maple Lake landfill. And that will leave the 3 events for Oxtongue, Dorset, and Maple, 1 at each site.
Any questions or thoughts on the revised schedule? Could I then have a mover and a seconder to approve their new dates? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
By Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives environmental report EB 1424 regarding household hazardous waste collection events in 2024, and council concurs with the proposed dates for the 2024 household hazardous waste events being held on August 24th, Oxtongue Lake Waste Disposal Site, September 14th, Dorset Transfer Station, October 12th, Maple Lake Waste Disposal Site, and then an agreement with Green for Life Environmental be brought back to a future council meeting for 2024 household hazardous waste event services.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is your environmental services activity report.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick report, budgets, planning, contracts seem to be the focus these days, so they're not very exciting to have in a report. Traffic at the sites is overall increase, but comparable to where we have been pre-COVID. And I'll leave it with that. Any questions?
Any questions on the activity report? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive it? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives environment report EB 1524 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, the construction, demolition, waste hauling and processing contract.
Thank you. So this is not a piggyback or a collaborative contract. This was an agreement with our existing contractor. And so the request is to move forward with sole source procurement with that contractor. They've provided us with great service and met some of our more challenging needs as far as these materials go. And in conversation with them, they have been able to offer us the same terms of an agreement that was struck with Dysart et al. For a 5-year contract. And my recommendation is to move forward with that same agreement for the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
Any questions on this? If not, then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report to authorize a single source procurement and bring forward a bylaw? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayou, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives environmental report EB 16 regarding request for single source purchasing approval for hauling and processing of construction and demolition waste. And further that council authorizes a single source procurement. And that council concurs with the recommendation of staff to enter into an agreement with York One Rosewarren Transfer Inc. for the hauling and processing of construction and demolition waste for the term of January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2028, and that an agreement with York One Rosewell Transfer Limited be brought back to a future council meeting.
Before we vote on that, Councillor Berry, did you have a question?
I did, just in regards to this specific area, I see that Dysart has entered into, I believe it's Dysart has entered into some sort of a program with waste materials that are still usable for building purposes. Is that done through Dysart's own initiative, or is that done through a contract like this in regards to waste material?
Through Mayor, I believe that's the that Minden Hills.
Okay.
That has the clean lumber reuse program, and that's their own initiative.
So if there was ever something that Algonquin Highlands wanted to do, we could do that on our own and it wouldn't affect any of these contracts. Okay. There we go.
Could I then have a vote on the motion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Can I realized I hadn't noted that there isn't an annual report for Dorset Transfer Station. It is a biannual report for that site as well, so that will be next year. So Dorset and Hawk will be in opposite years. So
Okay,
just for the
thank
public
you for that
interest.
clarification.
Thank you.
I think we'll, next up is Public Works. We'll try and do that before we break. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Thorne. So how are things going at the Dorset Rec Center?
So far, things are going great. Nothing to really report other than the ongoing construction projects that are currently in place. Painting, finishing up drywall, started some of the flooring, trim, door installations on the building. For the exterior of the building, it looks like we'll be planning on starting excavation of the ground in start of April, for the footings for the new entranceway. So far, things are going really well. There hasn't been any setback yet, so it's been business as usual going forward. So,
Any questions or comments? Madam CAO.
I just want to add, I know there's been discussion about the fireplace. Council had supported a fireplace. Staff have looked at that possibility and location upstairs. And unfortunately, upstairs doesn't seem feasible. However, we have found a great location downstairs. So council will recall the area at the bottom of the stairs is going to be made into sort of a good meeting area with some comfy
Kind of like a reception
furniture.
area.
And there's a location there that the staff have identified that would be a good space for the fireplace. So if council is supportive of moving forward with that, yeah, we'd like to include that as part of the project.
Comments? Well, it's kind of disappointing that it can't be upstairs, but I'm glad that we can still incorporate it. And if we're going to set up a nice sort of sitting area down at the base of the stairs, it sounds great.
And the thought process there was with the library being downstairs, there's potential that people will sort of congregate in that area, maybe sit to read a book or whatever.
In a lovely environment.
There'd be good space for that.
Sounds good. Councillor Short-Reed.
So hopefully if the stars align, the work outside will get done quicker and we'll be on our way faster. The contractor is ready for it. Materials are ready, so on and so forth.
yeah, so through you, Mayor, with the way the weather has been, and actually we've had this conversation quite a bit, and I'll refer to it as the foundation of snow, is not there this year. And Chris spoke to that earlier, is the frost level isn't nearly as deep as it usually is. So we're hopeful that as we start excavating in April, that the contractor will be able to do the work on the exterior of the building with minimal delays, if any, given the weather. Now, if the weather changes in the next week and we get a dumping of snow, I mean, that could delay things, but outside of those unknowns, so far everything's going well. As an expected opening date or a time frame, we're still in the air on that. Just because there's too many factors and the size of this project. Everything's going well, but I would hate to give a hard, fast date and then have to come back and say, no, sorry, we're gonna be another month. So when it gets closer, we'll have something a little bit more exact.
There is a certain amount of anxiety, of course, in the community. I mean, there's people that are excited about the center opening, and we're all excited about it opening. There's some anxiety in the delays because we have sort of at different times suggested that it would be open sooner than it is. I mean, but we did have the discussion about the wisdom of doing the outside construction before the center opened, and I can see that. I'm just hoping that the less amount of frost will allow us to move forward. And if we find that there's any delays, is there any opportunity for us to put a little bit of a giddy up on anything?
Well, unfortunately, with a project of this size, we can push all we want. And I don't think anything will come of it. I mean, with respect, we have to understand that this is a big project, and projects like this size they happen all over the place. I wouldn't say that there's any delays in this project yet. The reason the project has been extended is because the amount of extra work that council has approved to be putting into it to support our community. And I think that those members of the community that have the anxiety of this building not being open right away, they need to understand that we're building something for them versus just doing a quick reno to get the doors back open. I think you'll be very surprised, and the community will be very surprised on the opening when that happens, that this building isn't the normal Dorset Recreation building they were used to. This is going to be I wouldn't say a brand new building, but definitely a remodeled building that is going to be efficient and look new and clean and be user friendly. So that's the important thing I think we should be taking away from this, is that council and staff have worked very hard to upgrade this building.
Well, we're all looking forward to seeing it, excited about it. Angie?
I think to add to that, of note though, is if the weather does cooperate and we are able to move quickly on it, that we'll do a soft opening if we can. I mean, that's always the aim, if it's possible. But on the grand opening, obviously, as council's directed, that we do that in conjunction with the Scott Lopez Park, which we've begun working on. A date for that. I'd like to narrow that down because there is a lot of work that we need to do and target that will be date targeted. So we've discussed it as staff, and we're proposing July 27th, which is a Saturday.
Thoughts from council on that? Councillor Barry?
I support that, and I wouldn't want to delay the opening. I currently have a teaching contract on that day, but I could definitely make it up there probably for lunch, but.
That is it, that will definitely work because we are aiming for, and in conjunction with what council's sort of looking for, is sort of an afternoon event. So if council's okay with the 27th, we can move forward publicly with that, as well as our planning for that.
Well, we just hope that you can attend at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's work towards that. Sounds good. All right, moving on to your monthly activity report.
Thank you. There's really not a lot to report for February. It was a busy month, but a slow month at the same time with the way the weather has been. And I echo what other managers are saying about the weather, that it's very unique. In the years I've been here, I haven't seen anything like this. So plowing and sanding through the winter, or sorry, through the month of February wasn't typical. So it's been a little bit slower, but it has allowed our staff to get out and do other things like roadside brushing and cleanup of that nature. So that's been really good for us. Other than that, for the month of February, I don't have any other update. Unfortunately, I do want to bring to your attention that we did have a truck fire early last week. Unfortunately, one of our light duty trucks, while the operator was using it, it started on fire. And thankfully for their quick actions and their training, they were able to get the truck stopped and get the fire out without too much damage. Unfortunately, we won't know the extent of the damage until it gets looked at. So no injuries, no near misses or anything like that to our staff, which was excellent. They worked very well to get the fire out. So that was good of them, but unfortunately we are down a vehicle.
Any notion of the cause?
I couldn't tell
Hard
you.
to tell.
Yeah, it's unknown, but it was in the engine compartment. And on the brighter side, we do have a brand new truck sitting in the parking lot for council if they choose to take a look at it. I'll be here in the office so we can go out and walk around it. But we did receive our new 2024 Freightliner tandem with plowing and sanding equipment. So it's pretty exciting to see that. I know the staff are itching to get going on it. So it'll be in service. It's in service currently, but I haven't let the staff use it until after council gets to look at it. So they're excited.
Well, it's a pretty awesome looking piece of equipment sitting out in the yard, and I was kind of hoping when we have our break, we can bundle up and go and have a picture taken.
Yeah, that would be great. And I also just want to note that the purchase of that truck was through a collaboration with the County of Haliburton. So that's another great opportunity for us to work together.
And you do a good job in that regard. Thank you. Any other questions on the activity report? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive it? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Surrey, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved, council receives Public Works Report PWA 24 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so finally, there is you'll see on the agenda, there's a discussion about the gazebo at St. Stephen's for the Green Burial Site. You'll also see that although it was added late, there is a rendering of what the gazebo might look like. That's without the roof. Mr. Thorne and myself, Councillor Barry, and Mr. and Mrs. Moore and Glenn Diesel, the log builder for Fleming, all met on the site. And it was beneficial. And I think I might have mentioned before that all parties are sort of recognizing that it might have been more beneficial for Mr. Diesel to be present a lot sooner, to just explain how the program works for the students and what their requirements are and how that dovetails with what we'd like to do. And, you know, of course, you know, I've said numerous times that we really do support. This is a new partnership, and part of our strategic plan suggests that we look to partnerships and projects like this. And at any rate, what became rather clear was that in order for the program to be successful, this is subject to our saying basically 108 square feet, I think, in our last resolution. For 16 students, it needs to be a bigger structure, which is how we kind of came with the 150 square foot from the committee in the first place. Now, what we ultimately ended up sort of proposing or talking about was a 12 by 12 structure. And no, that's 144 square feet, or Mr. Diesel said we could do a 10 by 14, which would be 140. But the rectangular project would be just slightly more expensive because there'd be more roof rafters, I think it is.
More material.
More material required as opposed to the square. So we have a kind of a raw estimate now which is much higher than we originally anticipated. And we're probably looking at in and around the $18,000 range, which is a lot more than we had anticipated when we were talking about $10,000 and budgeted $10,000. But the Green Burial Society has committed to, and I'm sure they will give it to us in writing, raising everything over and above the $10,000 range. And they've got some, some good indications of funding. I think that they'll likely be successful in that regard. So two things. We can go forward and make a decision today to move forward with the 12 by 12 or 10 by 14. I would recommend the 12 by 12, but that's open for discussion. So that the program, we can give Fleming their authorization that the program will go forward, because there's a certain amount of, I think that he did give us kind of a deadline about when they needed to know, but I mean, we're kind of the only project slated for this year for them. So I'm kind of hoping that we can make a decision today, or there is the option that Mr. Diesel will come and speak to the committee about how the project works. And they are prepared to do the entire project, and I'll look to, whatever comments you want to make after I finish going on about it. It sounds to me like for the cost that is being estimated and would be given to us in some detail once we said, okay, we're going to go ahead with a 12 by 12 or a 10 by 14, then a more detailed costing can be done for us. I mean, I still say we're limited to our $10,000. The Green Burial Society is committed to raising funds. It can go back to the committee to talk about, to gain more information, but that creates a delay. In that we would have to wait for the next council meeting for us to ratify it once more what the committee has said. So I guess I would look for any additional information. Oh, I know what I was going to say was that combined with Fleming's program, Glenn's company is prepared to do the roofing on it, to do the foundation on it, if we say that that's the way we'd like to go. And it's my sense that, given that we didn't really plan for this project as far as public works is concerned, that it might just be easier to go ahead with sole sourcing the whole project out to the college and to Diesel, to Glenn's company. Anyway, I would look for thoughts from yourself, or corrections if anything, if I didn't get anything right, and questions from council.
Yes, through you, Mayor. So the college does put these programs together, and if council should choose that this year's not the year, then what they typically do is they build them for the program and then they sell them off. So this is a great opportunity to partner up with them for this kind of a project, and it would look very good at this site based on the rendering that you see before you. I think one of the main things to look at here is that this is a project above and beyond what we already have scheduled for this year, and given the type of year we're already getting into with staff members leaving us and recruiting new staff members, that I would strongly recommend that we do look at this being either single sourced out to the person that is putting this together. It's common practice for the college to put this together and then Diesel Woodworking to put it on site and put it together for the person. So I don't think that's any concerns there on our part. One thing of note though is that in that costing in our meeting, we did talk about that did include the and the foundation.
Right.
So that's important. It's not just the potential 18,000 for the structure. It's also to have it installed, turnkey, done. We walk away as the rendering sits in front of you. And from the rendering, you can see there are 3 benches essentially from post to post. Those benches would be something similar to the type of material that is that the structure is being built with, a fir type material versus your standard 2x12 off of Home Depot's rack. So it is a nice decorative look to it. And it just doesn't quite show that in the rendering. So I wanted to share that. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it from my side of it. I think that the committee showed great support in wanting to ensure that this comes to fruition and that they do have a lot of support in trying to fundraise for it to offset the cost, the extra costs. So, and then we do have the Green Barrow Society was also going for the grant opportunity. So hopefully they're successful in that to help offset this as well. So.
Well, and they just learned about another funding opportunity when we were at the meeting. So, things are looking quite good in that regard. The one thing that would be left for the committee, obviously, is still going to have to discuss interpretive signage and how that might work. So, I mean, that will continue as well as, whatever gardening or landscaping, work needs to be done at some point in time where that's separate from this. Questions? Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Thanks. I think it looks great. I'm delighted to hear that there's a relatively easy solution to how the other bits and pieces can come together in the project. And given that the committee is pretty small and that either through the site visit or through today's proceedings, the majority by far of the committee has now heard this information, I move that we just go straight ahead rather than it being brought back to the committee.
Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Barry. So I see you have scribed a resolution. Maybe you could read it out to us before we get a mover and a seconder.
Be resolved, council rescinds the portion of its motion on March 7th, 2024 related to the size of the gazebo to be located at St. Stephen's Cemetery and approves moving forward with a 12 by 12 gazebo at St. Stephen's Cemetery in partnership with Fleming College, and that council authorize a single source procurement with, and I don't have the name of the
I think it's Diesel Woodworking.
diesel woodworking. A single source procurement with diesel woodworking for the installation and completion of the gazebo.
All in favor? Question?
Just in the resolution, Don says 12 by 12. Is the 12 by 12 or 10 by 14 still up for discussion?
No.
Okay.
Unless you want it to be.
No.
Okay. That just adds to the price.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Second.
Oh. Yeah. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you.
I think we will take a 15-minute break. Legislatively required report on budget and expenses. Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, under Regulation 284-09, budget matters. Because we do not budget for amortization and post-employment benefits and solid waste closure and post-closure expenses, we have to effectually put them into against our existing numbers that we budgeted and approved to show where we would land, which in this case would be that we would be in a surplus position for the if we were to include those in our budget, which it's just a way of them to look at if we were to increase our budget to include these, where we would land so that they can get a better judgment of where the township is financially. So just a requirement. We have to prepare it every year for council's review and approval.
Any questions on that? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council adopts Treasury Report TT 1124 pursuant to the requirements of the Municipal Act 2001, Ontario Regulation 284-09.
All in favor? That's carried. Just as a note, the bylaw section of the agenda will include the formal adoption of our 2024 budget. It will also include employee salary and wages for 2024, as well as a bylaw to appoint or accept the remuneration for members of council. So next for you is the account summary.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, standard reporting. This is the accounts paid from February to March 13th. Total amount $1,007,000 and oh, I never can say this. $1,007,012.77. Sorry about that. Standard expenditures as per usual.
You're just so used to writing them that it's hard to actually say it.
Absolutely.
Any questions on the account summary? Could I have a mover to seconder to receive it? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Council Shortreed. Be it resolved, council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the account summary report TT 1024 in the total amount of $1,07,012.77 and hereby approves payment as same.
All in favor? That's carried. Finally, under finance business, there has been a request received from Melanie Clot Wong, who's the Executive Director of the Albertan Highlands Health Services Foundation, who is asking if they could have an insert in our tax bills related to the fundraising campaign that they have for the CT scanner and mammography equipment. Is there any comment that you wanted to make about that? I wonder if there's any, from what I understand, it's not a full page that's folded, but rather a third of a page. So like a single third size sheet. I don't know that that would add considerably to the cost. Was there any idea about if there would be an additional cost?
You are correct. It would just be a third of a page. My understanding is they do back and front, so it's just a single, not a folded page. It's a single page, third that would go into the tax bill. Our newsletter goes in, which is a folded page, but I can't anticipate that it would add any postage cost.
Well, what I'm thinking, and from what I heard earlier, because now we're doing so much more electronically that our postage cost for tax bills is probably decreased. So that would kind of provide for it. Councillor Barry and then Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, that would be my question. I support the insert, but if the, if 10% of the tax bills that are going out are now digital, could the hospital information be digital as well for those that are receiving a digital copy?
Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, yes, the newsletter itself is digital and can be added as an attachment when we send out the e-bills. And I would assume that they would be able to provide us with a digital format of that as well, and we'll just add the two attachments.
I think this would, approving this would make us good corporate citizens. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, I admit I wavered momentarily on it. I wondered to myself, oh, would we be opening up the doors for lots of folks who want to do fundraising to ask to put their fundraising request slips in our tax bills, et cetera, et cetera. And then I remembered our taxes do pay for these services. So it is part of the same house, even though it's a separate entity. HHS is independent, but a part of our tax bill does go towards these services. So to have something in it that has to do with hospital services, I think does make sense and does not necessarily open a door for other requests at other times.
Any other comments or questions? Could I then have a mover and a seconder then to approve the insert? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Be it resolved, council approves a request from Melanie Cloud Wong, Executive Director of Albertan Highlands Health Services Foundation, to include an insert in the 2024 final tax bill mailing.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next is the administration business, and the first item is the Dorset Museum Committee update. Anything that members of council would like to bring to our attention? Councillor Shortreed.
Everything's moving as long as normal. They had a really good turnout for Snowball. Unfortunately, we did have a retirement, from Barb Consonac, and unfortunately, she has passed away since then. So I think they might be looking for another member.
Well, our condolences to Ms. Kostinek's family. That's unfortunate news. I guess maybe if we, would you like us to automatically proceed with seeking another member for the Dorset Museum Committee, or would you like that to come back through the committee?
Through the committee, please.
Okay. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the update for February 27th? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
By Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives the February 27th, 2024 Dorset Museum Committee meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. The next item is a procedural bylaw and proposed amendments that are to be made to that bylaw, some clarifications and items that came up during previous discussions that we've had. It's being presented by our clerk. So are there any comments that you'd like to make?
No, thank you. Just to highlight, some of the additions were approved by council or directed by council at their February meeting. So they have been included, as well as some procedural amendments for practices that we do, but we have highlighted it in the bylaw. And there was one section related to members of council being permitted to attend electronically. They've been added in section 23D. So that's up for discussion if council wishes to discuss that. Staff have included that a maximum of 2 regular special meeting, as it was partially discussed at council, and any additional request could be made at the discretion of the mayor. So that is still up for discussion if required to confirm that. And the rest of the changes are highlighted if council has any questions.
I had kind of thought that any request for attending via Zoom would be at the discretion of the mayor. Did we discuss additional requests over and above? I don't know that I don't recall us talking about additional requests. Deputy Mayor, do you?
I don't, having put in the request, I didn't ask for more than 2. Perhaps it's a good idea to have that additional clause just in case something does happen, but originally the idea was up to 2 at the discretion of the mayor. But, I'm happy with whatever the clerk and council.
So any requests at the discretion of the mayor.
Mhm.
Any other comments? Councillor Barry?
Just there's a few times that I've been asked by different taxpayers in regards to the agenda being published. Would it be a huge change in this procedural bylaw to have a further, I think it becomes public on Tuesday, is that correct? Is there, I'm just thinking if there was something specific that someone wanted to see and they couldn't come to the meeting, or it was during their working hours and they couldn't watch live, is there any way that it could be available sooner, or is that just opening a huge amount of work on the providing information to the clerk ahead of time?
Well, and this is something that's been raised before, and as a concern, it is a challenge. Because the goal is to allow members of council an opportunity to see the agenda in advance of the public and know whether there might be the reason to pull something or to add something before it goes out to the public. Given the 4-day work week, it also causes a bit of a challenge with, we don't get to do agenda review until the Tuesday, and it comes out immediately after that. So it is a bit of a challenge. I think it might take some thinking from staff before we were to make a change. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Part of the same conversation has been a frustration from time to time that if someone sees something the moment the agenda comes out that they would like to create a delegation for, they're not able to because the delegation materials were due previous to the issuing of the agenda. And that remains a conundrum for me, and I don't have any suggested ways around that, but I do recognize that that can be quite frustrating for some folk. And I put it forward. Is there anything that can be done?
Well, I would say before that, I mean, obviously the clerk's going to speak to that, but I would think if, if they did see something at the last minute and they don't have the opportunity to make a delegation, they can call their member of council who could raise it during the course of the discussion to ask for it to be deferred at the council meeting. But that's one way of dealing with it if you thought that it was sufficient enough of a concern to do that. Madam Clerk.
Exactly what the mayor said. I have included in the agenda as one of the housekeeping amendments, because we do hear that, and that any late requests, I have worded in here, to matter on the upcoming agenda are encouraged to provide the clerk with a letter outlining their opposition, comments, or concerns no later than the noon on the Wednesday preceding the meeting. So it is published on Tuesday. So they would receive notification of that, or they can reach out directly to council as the practice is now. And as the mayor said, it can be brought to council's attention on the Thursday meeting.
I know it's not a perfect system, that there's not a lot of lead time, but, to change it in any dramatic way, I think would change our whole way of doing business and scheduling for staff. Any other specific questions about the changes that are being proposed today? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
I have a couple, one on what has been proposed and then a further one on something that we haven't addressed yet. The one on the proposed change, number 27, about electronic participation. It's written, electronic participation shall count towards quorum, great. For hybrid or fully electronic meetings, provided the quorum of members is present, failure to connect electronically shall not be reason to adjourn or delay meetings or invalidate or call into question the proceedings or decisions of any meeting or part of that thereof. If the electronic piece that isn't working is a failure,
To be quorum?
no,
Okay, sorry.
a failure to be able to live stream proceedings or record them because Zoom isn't working. Does that mean that it is no longer a public meeting, and therefore does that create a problem?
Through you, Mayor? No, and I have put in some verbiage around that. As long as the meeting's open to the public, which we are now, if the live stream was to fail, it would not invalidate the meeting, and the meeting could continue. And if a member of council is zooming in, that's separate from, if I understand correctly, if the live stream went down, the Zoom would still be working and you'd have quorum. If it goes down, if Zoom goes down and there's a member of council zooming in and we still have quorum, the meeting would continue without that member of council. There are still provisions in there under 29 and 30 around that as well.
But if it impacted quorum,
Yes.
then it would be a problem. Go ahead.
I think that, and I should have pointed this out, the piece that I was stuck on was for hybrid or fully electronic meetings. So if the meeting is fully electronic, then it couldn't be public if the room isn't open for people to come into because it's fully electronic.
That's right. If it's not open to the public. So if it all went down.
Yeah.
And we were live streaming it in COVID, for example,
Yeah.
the meeting would have to stop. If it's closed to the public.
Okay, I guess I didn't fully interpret that from this wording, but if that's how it is, then I'm sure I'll spot it on the next time around. That's great.
ahead.
And I have one other question regarding point 137, and this is not something that, that the clerk brought back.
I'm sorry, what?
137.
137?
Yeah, which is about council representatives on boards and committees, which is presumably including committees of council. There's a great list of things that we do, but what I don't see on the list is an ability to chair, yes or no, those committees of council, but also the sort of work that that council would be expected to put in, for example, on the airport committee or the rec committee, the actual number of hours that council representatives would put in to facilitate this or generate that or liaise and do the substantive work of the committee. I didn't know if those were things that you wanted to include.
I'm not I mean, that's understood. What is it exactly that you, was there specific wording or what's your thinking there?
When I read the list of things that council representatives on boards and committees are appointed to undertake, a lot of it is liaison. It's not doing the stuff of the committee. For example, Snowball, there was a lot of work to be done and our council members put in a lot of work alongside the rest of the committee to get the stuff done. It wasn't just a liaison. And I wondered if that's something that we wanted to address on the list.
I know that we've had discussions about that in the past, about expectations and primarily the committees seem to differ in how they work. Some of them really and truly are simply a liaison unless a member of council wishes to become more involved and do work that's associated with it, where on others, it might be, a bit of a requirement. Like the recreation committee takes on a lot more than, say another committee might do. I think that it's a matter of choice. It would be hard to define expectations beyond being a liaison, but I believe that there are expectations beyond being a liaison. For instance, I know that members of council are taking minutes at meetings, which is absolutely and totally appreciated and probably would result in a good quality set of minutes as a result. I think that this might be a bigger discussion than what we might have today about expectations. Because I know there are different schools of thought on that. I know that there are and have been members of council who believe that's it. I'm just here to be a liaison and I don't need to do anything beyond that. And that's, when you're working with a group that are all prepared to volunteer their time and their efforts, it's hard to get away from jumping in and volunteering your own time to do things. I know that, but there's different schools of thought, and I'm not quite sure how you would quantify that in the procedural bylaw. I think it's a matter of choice and depending on the type of committee that it is. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor, if this helps at all, we have a community or a committee member guide that we have created, which is part of our orientation. And out there, it outlines the role of the council representative as well, and it lists quite a few things that council can do. And it also, it's up to council if they wish to participate in the volunteer aspect of it. So there are guidelines in that committee guide as well. And I think it would be a little difficult to try to list everything in the procedural bylaw.
And I think sometimes it depends on your level of interest in something. I know, as an example, I initially, when I first came on council, I sat on the Stanhope Museum Committee, which was a superb opportunity for me to learn more about the community and its history. But I absolutely loved Heritage Day. And that was something that I just really like to be involved in and be a volunteer for Heritage Day. And I mean, but that was my choice. It wasn't necessarily a requirement. So it's a matter of choice.
Okay.
Unless you can come up with something, some specific wording for it, but I mean, we can talk about this, some more as time goes by.
Well, the wording could be along the lines of what has been said, that, any additional work supportive of the committee's efforts is a matter of choice. Just so that it's clear that the council member does have a choice, because there has been various approaches in the past about what has been expected. And
But see, there are some expectations
mhm,
that are not a matter of choice. I mean, you find yourself, if you're the liaison person between the committee and council and or staff, you might find yourself becoming more involved in a circumstance than you had anticipated or hoped
mhm,
to be involved.
mhm.
So, to just say it's a matter of choice is, I don't know that that really covers it. Because it's not, I mean, sometimes it's a responsibility as opposed to a choice.
Well,
Go ahead.
absolutely. And I guess that's why I wonder if a line here would be appropriate, just because here in, say, worst case scenario, someone could look to this and say, the council member has no role in the substance work. And I
I-
don't know if anyone would get that particular about it, but.
I think we need to have a broader discussion about this before we make a change in the procedural bylaw, because we're free to make a change to the procedural bylaw whenever we want. So. Madam Clerk.
Into the procedural bylaw, that list, it does say which may include but not limited to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if that's something to look at, and along with our guide that everyone gets when they're appointed, it clearly defines the roles and leaves it general open as well. If council so wishes to at some time add additional wording, we can do that as well.
So any other questions or comments about the draft amendments? So do we receive the report and then a bylaw later on, or just go straight to bylaw?
We'll receive the report. We have to give notice to change our procedural bylaw, so this will be considered the notice. Then the final version will come back at the next regular council meeting for approval.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report and its recommendations? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives report CO 824 amendments to procedural bylaw draft submitted by Don Newhook dated March 21st, 2024, and Council concurs with the proposed amendments, and that in accordance with item 130 of the Township's procedural bylaw, notice is hereby provided that amendments to bylaw 2023-12, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council, will be considered by council at a future regular meeting, and council directs the proposed bylaw be brought forward at its April 4th regular council meeting for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, under general admin business is the strategic plan. This is the final version, which we would be receiving today. And I would like to thank everybody once again for all of their work and involvement in this process. It's been a educational and excellent process in many ways. I would say that staff are already starting to generate work plans to, for this work to continue. And obviously, we have a number of discussions. So we just, had a brief discussion, but there's lots more discussion and work on council's part, to make this work and to keep it a living document. So I guess I would ask at this point if there's any questions about it, any comments. Councillor Barry.
Just a question in regards to what happens now. So we accept it, and then would it come back to us annually? Would it be talked about during budgets and priorities or that type of thing? I just wonder, like, how often will we look at this?
I would say, and I would look to the CAO to respond as well. But I mean, this is a living document. If we want to make it work, we all need to keep an eye on. I mean, staff are going to be keeping an eye on it and going to be bringing things forward to us. But it's also up to us if we see that there are things that are, you think are a greater priority or that you'd like to discuss. We need to keep an eye on it, keep an eye on our goals and objectives, and the steps that are laid out to make the actions that are laid out to make things happen, and make sure that we keep this document alive, that we do have the document or the discussions that we need to have to make things happen. and to achieve the goals that we've set out. Comments from yourself, Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, exactly that. Staff will be bringing, they're currently working on work plans. So for the short term and the long term, they will be bringing those to council for approval, in the next month or so. And then you'll see, this will be our Bible. This is what we will base our work plans or our projects on. You'll see that projects and priorities, it'll be based on this document. And each year, you know, as the work plans develop, you'll see it each year at the planning stage, the implementation stage. It'll all be based on this.
Other questions or comments? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive and approve the strategic plan? Councillor Barry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Council Berry, second by Council Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council approves the Township of Algonquin Highlands Corporate Strategic Plan as presented and directs a bylaw be brought forward to adopt the plan.
All in favor? That's carried. Finally, under administration business, you'll see a discussion item which I asked to have added to the agenda. A friend of Norma Goodyear's called me a few days ago and said that a number of her friends and groups that Norma worked with and on were wanting to have a bench built in her memory and donated to the museum. The proposal is for the bench to be painted in pride colors. And I could not see any reason why we would say no to such a suggestion and a generous offer. Actually, I think the little benches out there could probably use being replaced. But what I was thinking about and would look to council for their thoughts on it is whether it would be appropriate for us to turn this over to the museum committee to decide on what they see as being the best location. Now, I did tell them that we had suggested and agreed to the planting of a tree, and they were all excited about that. The tree and the bench could go together. To provide shade, mind you, it might take some time for a new tree to provide shade. So they may have an idea about, I mean, maybe they want it over by the picnic table, or maybe they want it in front of the museum, and let's leave it up to them to decide that, if you would. So I don't know if we need any, do we have a resolution approving the bench and deferring it to the committee for placement?
Yes, I just have to add to defer to the museum, but I do have it drafted that council accepts with appreciation a donation of a public bench to be installed at the Stanhope Heritage Museum in the memory of Norma Goodyear.
Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayoud. So for those of you who may be familiar, there is a similar bench, I think, across from the Thai restaurant in Minden. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. You've heard the resolution. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And thank you to Norma's friends for the suggestion. It's definitely gratefully received. Next up is planning business. Good morning once more.
Yes, good morning.
Mr. O'Callahan, and you have a proposed shore road allowance closing on Little Hawk Lake.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is an application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property on Little Hawk Lake. It is a developed piece of property. They do have some structures on the shore road allowance. So they're looking to acquire ownership to deal with those structures. So staff are supportive of the application proceeding through the regular process.
Are there any questions with respect to that? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to move forward with the application? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives report PL 2024 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 24, concession 1213, geographic township of Stanhope, Little Hawk Lake, and council approves in principle. Application OSRA 324 made to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance and request the applicants to proceed in accordance with shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, there are the external board meetings and any information associated with them. Anything new from the Dorset Partnership or Health Hub?
Not until April.
Okay, thank you. As Councillor Richards is away today, no report on the Upper Trent Water Management or Muskoka Watershed Council. I did have a CPAC meeting this past week with the detachment commander and a lady who gave us quite a bit of information and advice on the establishment of the police board. It's quite daunting. There's a lot of work to be done by the new police board, terms of reference, policies and procedures that have to be set, subcommittees in terms of reference for subcommittees. I think there's a lot of work going forward. I mean, it was all not overly daunting, but just a full realization that there's a lot of work, coming forward for the group. I believe that this will be on the appointment to the board will be discussed at the next county council meeting. So we'll move forward with that. I know that we're already getting some interest from some community members on being on the board, which is good. Although it's still interesting to see that past OPP or retired OPP members cannot be on the board, where other police representatives like Toronto Police can be on the board. And I don't really see the difference, but it is what it is. The representative that spoke to us did say that she was going to follow up on county council's request to have their representative, because there was a representative each of the 4 municipalities, which was deemed likely to be the 4 mayors, and a representative from county council, which would possibly create a duplication in representation. And county council thought that it might be more appropriate to have their appointment be another member of the public, so that there'd be 2 members of the public on the board, which I thought was a really good idea. So she was going to follow through on that, and hopefully we'll hear about that shortly. Otherwise, I believe that was the last CPAC meeting that we will have had, and we'll be moving forward shortly with the new police board. There has not been an EORN meeting. We did just get a draft copy of the strategic planning work that EORN did. And interestingly enough, this week is the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is going to be doing a strategic planning process starting this afternoon and going through all of tomorrow. And the EORN strat plan will likely form part of how those 2 bodies will continue to work together. So that'll be an interesting process, and I'll have more on that in the next few weeks. Anything on the library board?
Nothing in particular, apart from the fact that we've, of course, gone through our budget process. County Council has gone through its budget process. Some changes were made to that budget that reduced what was asked for by the library board. But then in the subsequent meeting of the library board, a method was agreed to ensure that no programming or circulation or hours would be lost as a result of those changes. So the news is no change, but not because there wasn't a great deal of stuff going on in the background. So that's good news for our public, our library going public.
And it was my understanding that part of the decision-making process was because we've been given to understand that there will be a review that's going to take place looking at staffing and roles and responsibilities over the next few months, and that may impact what is brought forward in the next budget cycle. Anything on community safety and well-being?
No.
Okay, anything on Muskoka River watershed other than dire news and praying for rain?
Yeah, so no major updates, but there has been precipitation of late, which has made a difference. So we are starting to see an increase of water levels in lakes and rivers that is slowly approaching the target for operations for the system, which is on the whole a better prognosis than the last time we spoke. So that's good.
So we should all do a little bit of a rain dance, but don't get too carried away. Okay, right on. I don't think you've had any climate action plan work. And do you think there's anything that we need to update council on with respect to county council, other than the fact that we passed our budget? Go ahead.
Yeah, my sense has been, we've been so budget heavy that a lot of the substantive stuff will be coming up in the next few months, now that budget is passed.
So the only other two items, I guess, really worth mentioning that were taken or withdrawn from the budget to try and bring the level percent increase down was that there was a proposal for 2 supervisory positions for EMS. And in fact, their long-term planning process is recommending 4 supervisors so that all the shifts are covered. At the present time, the chief and deputy chief are doing a lot of that work, which is, obviously an additional burden. We moved forward with just one of the 2 supervisors that were proposed for this year. And the other thing was the food processors that they will not, that program will not continue. Other than that, I can't think of anything. As you say, we've been so budget focused that now we can get on with the planning for other things, and we have a meeting upcoming soon. Nothing under general business. I don't believe that there's any notice of motion at this time. Was there any support for correspondence? Could I then have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence summary listing? Councilors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Counselor Barry, second by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives the March 21st, 2024 correspondent listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And we will now move into closed session. So could I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councilor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Counselor Barry. Be resolved, council hereby adjourns its open session at 11:17 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session in accordance with section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended regarding 1, personal matters about identifiable individual and advice subject to solicitor client privilege in accordance with section 239(2)B and F. 2, personal matters about identifiable individuals in accordance with section 239(2)B regarding candidates for advisory committees of council.
All in favor? That's carried. Welcome back to the open session. Coming out of closed, we have a motion to appoint people to several committees. So if I could have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that Greg DeLong and Jamie Sala be appointed to the Environmental and Stewardship Committee for the remaining term of council, and that Greg DeLong be appointed to the Recreation Committee for the remaining term of council.
All in favor? That's carried. And next are the bylaws. So if I could have a mover and a seconder to adopt the bylaws as listed. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry. I'm assuming that they're all together.
I'm sorry.
I'm
They're
assuming they're all together.
Yes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. 2024-24, adopt expenditures and revenues for 2024. 2024-25, adopt salary and wages for 2024. 2024-26, council remuneration. 2024-27, zoning amendment AHZBA 1023. 2024-28, zoning amendment AHZBA 124. 2024-29, zoning amendment AHZBA 224. 2024-30, zoning amendment AHZBA 324. 2024-31, adopt a corporate strategic plan. 2024-32, contract extension agreement, landfill site attendant and maintenance services. 2024-33, appointment of bylaw officer for the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails, Jonas Stonehouse.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-34, being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of council held during its March 21st, 2024 regular meeting, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? It's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillors Barry and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:46 a.m.
All in favor?